Hello to all of our change makers, and welcome back to another interview where we are celebrating change makers from all over the world. And today I am delighted. This is almost a next door neighbor here in Georgia. While I'm sitting here in Tennessee, I've been all over the world with these interviews. So welcome, Mike Van Pelt. Tell everybody a bit about you and what makes you so amazing.
Thanks for having me on. Well, it has to be my initials that make me amazing because we have to talk about it. Don't we have to talk about it?
Why not?
So, when I get introduced as Mike Van Pelt, I just tell everybody, that you can also call me MVP. Everybody has my entire life because that happens to be my initials. So
Right.
sometimes people even shorten it. They just call me VP. I'm okay. I respond. It's been that way my entire life. Yeah.
Love
But
it. Love it. Well, tell us what your life is all about these days. I know you've got some things you're working on.
Oh man, yeah, just a handful. So my primary focus has been on Christian men's life coaching for a number of years, and it really has to do with my walk. And at a certain point in my life, I had men come walk alongside me, and they were able to mentor me, and we were able to go deep. And really, what I found was the importance and the gratification of having those in-depth relationships with other men. And it works both ways, where somebody else has a question about life, you may have an answer, and vice versa. And I found that when we were willing to be vulnerable with each other and really begin to have these hard conversations that a lot of times people don't want to talk about, that I felt my life improving. Like everything was changing. And then it really, the encouragement of that really landed itself at a men's retreat where I had an encounter with God, and my intimacy with God that I didn't know was available showed up. And
Okay.
it was really in that intimacy that I began to understand my faith life in a much more deeper and meaningful way. And as a result of that, I've just had so many things show up in my life. It was almost like if you have a clogged pipe and it's like all of a sudden you unclog it, right? You call the plumber and they in this case, I called on God and he called on me, and we met in the middle, and that pipe got unclogged. And the minute it did, it was like, boom, it was like one thing after another coming at me. But the
Wow.
coaching piece really comes from a place of understanding that, hey, I had men walk alongside me. I want to do the same thing for them. And I feel like there's such a huge need in the marketplace. And I don't mean that to sound like a business perspective, but there's such a need out there just in general for men to want to find somebody sometimes to just talk with them, because they don't have a lot of that in their life. There's so much loneliness out there, so much isolation, and men are just like so good at isolation. We are the pros when it comes to isolation, and I don't mean that in a good way. but but yeah, so that's really the premise of everything. And then everything else kind of morphed out of that. The podcast, doing a podcast, the writing the books, now speaking, all of this stuff just really morphs out of what started as something kind of simple, a men's small group.
I love it. Well, and I know you just published a new book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll even hold it up for everybody. So this
All
is
right.
this is the book, True Man, True Ways, a roadmap of discovery to the masculine heart. And yeah, so that book tells the story. What is a true man? So a true man was our men's small group, and that's Jesus Christ walk on earth as a true man. And we just felt like, oh, he's the ultimate role model. And so I tell that story on how it came to be, and really keep it pretty basic in nature, but it's it's a good basic because it's the fundamentals. I always talk about my world with sports, you know. If you don't have good fundamentals, you can't move on to the rest. You got to be able to catch the ball, pass the ball, dribble the ball, shoot the ball. Those things are all important if you're going to be a great basketball player, but you can't take step number 2 if you can't do step number 1. And so in the book I talk a lot about goal setting. Journaling, man, nobody talks about men in journaling. So,
Mhm.
you know, we even give them places to journal in the book. You talk about men's health and how important it is to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your, you know, family, your finances. And how what I did in the book was I talked about all those things and then I went to the Bible and scripture and said, what does the Bible have to say about all this? What does God
Mhm.
have to say about all this? And what, you know, because I wanted people to see that, you know, a lot of people talk about goal setting, but what does
Mhm.
scripture really have to say about goal setting? What does God have to, you know, say about goal setting? And
Mhm.
I would dare say Jesus had probably one of the greatest um, goals ever, right? He that he gave to the disciples. Go out and disciple, do what I've done, and create Christians throughout the world. And you know the amazing part of it?
Mhm.
We started with 12 disciples, and now what do we have? Like over a billion Christians in the world or something. Think about that. It
Yeah.
started with 12 fishermen, construction guys, regular old, and I think we kind of jokingly say sometimes in our groups, knuckleheads, who who changed the world.
That's it, and, you know, that's hugely a big part of the message my husband and I are working to get out here because, you know, I've never been able to find anywhere in the Bible where Jesus ever told us to sit on our hands and wait for him to return. He was
No.
saying, "Follow me." And, you know, for our perspective, we go, well, yeah, because you're the miracle that we're all looking for. You're the one who can get busy bringing heaven to earth. What on earth are you all waiting for?
Yeah. You know, it's really funny because I when I first started using the quote unquote true man as a brand, people would ask me, they'd say, well, how do you define a true man? And I thought it was really, for me, as I sat there and I studied it, I'm like, who am I to have the definition of what it is? And I really started digging back, and this is what I say to people, and I'm bringing this up because you said 2 words that I think are critical to this. Um, I was watching The Chosen, which if you're watching this right now and you're like going, "What's The Chosen?" and you don't know what that is, you better Google it and you better go watch it. Because my view of what I would like to see believe Jesus is the guy that plays Jesus in The Chosen just blows my mind. But there's a scene, right? And we've all read this in the Bible where Jesus is standing on the shore and you know the soon to be disciples show up and he says to Peter, and it just caught me. Just really, I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard the story, but in that scene on The Chosen, it really stuck with me, right? When he says to Peter, follow me. And I thought, there it is. What is the definition of a true man? You get to decide, but it starts with follow me.
Mm.
And then you fill in the blanks after that, what that means to you. And you know, so you never you never know. I mean, I remember just sitting there watching that scene and I'd seen it many times before. And I'm just like, when it hit me, I just started to, my tears started rolling down my cheeks, you know. I was like, whoa, that's good stuff right there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I always think back to, you know, I followed Les Brown for a long time, and he says that, often says that the graveyard is the most, you know, it's got the most buried treasure of anywhere on the planet because
Yeah.
so many people leave and take their gifts with them that God intended for them to leave here.
Yeah.
That's sad commentary.
Yeah, it is. You know, or you probably heard the saying, "The dash," right? I think it's a poem, "The
Yes,
Dash."
yes.
You
Mhm.
don't want to take your dash with you. You don't want to leave this earth with the music in you.
Right.
And you know, I that and that to me that really becomes the mission of what I'm trying to do. I don't want to see another man not achieve their mission or their vision if I can help them get there. And
Yeah.
so I've worked with a lot of other coaches. I've heard, I do a lot of networking, as you know, I see meet a lot of people. And the one thing I realized really early on when I got involved in this was I would meet people and they'd say something along the lines of, this isn't necessarily a direct quote, although I have heard it, is I fix people. I don't fix anybody. I ask really deep questions, strong questions, and it all stems from listening. I'm a big believer that we all have what we need inside of us.
Mhm.
The
Agree.
most important thing that I bring to the table, and really any good coach, teacher, educator, leader for that matter, is to ask good questions so
Mhm.
that you can independently figure out for yourself what's your heart saying?
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
Yeah.
What is it that is your why or your purpose?
Absolutely. Yep, I agree. And too many people are walking around with, it's like there's a disconnect right around here. Their head and their heart are not connected. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think we have in society today. And it's equally the same for women as it is for men.
Yeah. It is. I think that, one of the bigger differences I see in men is we're fixers. So and when you're a fixer, you're up in your head,
Hmm.
and so I commonly say to people, I help guys get out of their head and into their heart, and that's
Hmm.
where you really need to reside because that's where all the heavy work of trying to figure out your life happens.
Yep.
So I don't think I'm alone in figuring that out. I've talked to so many people that that's where, and we all have to deal with our garbage at some point if we're going to be our best version of ourselves. And unfortunately, the devil, he likes to wedge his head in there when we're about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, when we're susceptible and, don't know what's going on. He wedges his ugly head in there, and there's some kind of crazy event or thing that happens often out of our control. And, whatever that it is, we somehow, I don't know why it works this way, end up dealing with it. We stuff it down in our souls, hope we don't have to deal with it. But when we become an adult and all of a sudden we have to do relationship, that's where it seems to really be sneaky because it catches up to us in our relationships for guys with our wives, with our children, in our jobs. And, if you're going to do the really hard work, you're going to have to take a look in the mirror. And you might not like it initially. I know I didn't.
Yeah. Looking
But
in the mirror can be
yeah,
tough.
the in the long run, it's the most beneficial that thing that you will do and continue to do because you evolve as a creature,
Yeah.
right? I'm still evolving and I'm still looking in the mirror. What do I need to do to be better today so that I can go out and help other people be better today?
Well, I'm curious, have you had an opportunity to work with any young adults, or are you mostly working with some of the more wisdom generations, as
Yeah,
I like to call them?
you know, that is a really good question, Cheyenne, and I don't like to phrase things that way because I think all questions are good. But here's what I found. When I first started this, I thought my audience was me. I thought it was maybe that middle-aged guy that had lived a little bit and was starting to ask those questions and maybe even starting to think about their legacy. Recently, I've noticed more younger men, and there's when I say younger, I'm talking a range. Like I'm talking with somebody now who's getting ready to graduate from high school, but his father's not present, and so I see this trend. So
Mhm,
I see like mostly these, especially when guys get in their 30s, that's when things start clicking into place.
mhm.
But I'm seeing these younger people looking at people like me and going, and I don't, when I say this, I don't say this braggadociously. I've been married for 29 years. I have 2 kids. I have the appearance, and I do, it's not a facade, of being stable, of having wisdom, of being somebody that's easy to talk to. And what I'm finding is that some of these younger people are all of a sudden attracted to that. They want that. And I think it's because when I look at the divorce rates across America,
Mhm.
there's been a real lack of father figures in place for many, or maybe they haven't had a father figure at all, but they
Yeah.
haven't had proper men mentorship in their life. And the younger people, they're really a heck of a lot more self-aware than I was when I was their age, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that in our society today, but they're self-aware and they're looking for somebody who, I hate to think of myself as sage, at this point. I'd like to wait a few more years before I go into that, but they're looking for somebody like me, and so even as you ask that question, and this is a question that's bubbled up in me, like, who is my audience? What is my audience? And I love working with young people. I always have. I always thought I'd be a college basketball coach. So that puts me in that age of 18, 19, 20, 21, anyway.
Mhm.
But I love young people. And, when I look at our country as a whole right now, I'm 55. Unless something makes a major turn, I'm not going to be the guy to solve the problems anymore. These, 20-year-olds are going to be the ones that are going to face the music,
Yeah.
so to speak, and have to turn that ship around a little bit. But you know, I don't want to ramble too much, but it's interesting to see what's going on in our culture. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this ship that I see going on so I can help the right audience?
Mhm. No, I get it. And I share the concern. I mean, yeah, we may have talked previously about my friend Martin Brossman, who's also doing a lot with men's issues, men's work, and he's saying that and suicide has gone off the charts of all age groups, but they're
Yeah.
especially the young men, and 70 to 80% of all suicides are guys. I mean, that's sad. We need, we need more men to find their proper place in society, to be able to, be that protector and be, an extremely wonderful part of keeping families together and taking care of families and all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, the pendulum swings back and forth in so many ways on so many topics. And Lord knows, I think about my mom and the fact that my mom wanted to be a state highway patrol person. And she was not allowed because she was female. Okay. So, luckily the pendulum has swung
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
now she could have been. But at the same time, it's like, how do you bring things back towards center where we understand that,
Ye
it doesn't matter what sex you are, you've got a role in society that's
Yeah,
important.
100%, and that's it's funny as you were saying that, I was writing down some words. Um, what's missing for a lot of these, young men that take their lives, and I think that there's 4 pretty big words. Initiation is not a part of our vocabularies anymore. The mentoring The rites of passage.
Yes.
The Jewish community does this really well, where they define where a boy becomes a man, but the rest of society, we're pretty wishy-washy on it. Apprenticeships. I
Yes.
mean, where is all this stuff? These are really beautiful things where we're, helping somebody learn, not just a calling, but life.
Life. Yeah.
And when you have initiation, there's mentoring going on. When you have apprenticeship, there's mentoring going on. And rest assured, at least this is the case for me. Well, all that's going on, you're really talking a lot about life.
Mhm.
And I laugh. When I first was really beginning to think about, what is this coach? I don't like this term coach, because it's been watered down, and I started talking to a lot of people about it. And I remember sitting across from a business consultant, and the guy, we were talking, and he primarily works with CEOs. And he just paused, and he started to blush. And he goes, "You know what? I spend most of my time doing with these guys." And I'm like, and I felt like I knew where he was going to go. He goes, I'm spend most of my time life coaching these guys." And I went, "Of course you do." And the reason I say that is that was at a point where I was like, "Yeah, Mike, ditch this business consulting stuff," because my view of it was, I could put in a world class system in your business. But if you think everybody around you sucks or your life sucks, then it doesn't matter what system is in there. And I just felt like I was more person to person anyway and wanted to work with people.
Mhm.
But, I think that the real system that matters is you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've gotten so technical. I mean, you can. I always love the analogy of a mobile phone is more advanced than the first spaceship that went to the moon. I mean, just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
problem with that is, while that can be used for good, we're using it for evil, and it's taken over our minds to the point where we don't know what to do with it. And we're literally being controlled by all of it. And in the meantime, where are our relationships?
Yep. Yep.
We have horrible, we are the most connected yet disconnected culture that we've ever been.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Oh goodness. So it goes. Well, I'm curious, one thing it keeps dinging in the back of my head here. I mean, do you have a story of somebody you've helped just so that people get a better understanding about the depth of the work you're doing?
It's always a range, but I will say that I had somebody that I'm trying to tell the story, so make sure they're anonymous.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things that guys deal with is identity. I was have a similar story on this, but we tie our identity to our careers.
Yes.
And if we can't find the career that we want, we can get lost in that. And so I've had a number of guys that fell into the same pattern that I went through. And that is, well, at a certain point, you just have to go out and find a job versus finding what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And, because it costs so much money to live anymore. And
Mhm.
and so I think one of the bigger things that I find myself working with guys on is their identity and getting their identity back. Because when you don't like what you're doing as a job, you're not going to put 100% into it. So I think the only way you can get by in those situations, because let's face it, we've it, it, I would love to say that everybody's going to be doing what they're passionate about, but you know as well as I do, sometimes you just a paycheck. So what do we do? I think the most important thing that a guy does in that, and I've had a lot of conversations about this, is that you need to know whose your identity is in, and that's Christ first and foremost. And if we can go to take that relationship a little bit deeper and you can get closer with Christ, then I think you can improve in every area of your life. So it really starts with that. And then everything else filters out. So, if somebody doesn't like their job, I can understand it. But if you dwell on it, you're only making matters worse. So we got to get you to a place where you know whose identity, where you really need to reside with your identity. And then we got to get your mental attitude right. And when you have those two things, anything is possible. Now, it may not happen right away, but anything is possible. And so I find, that most common stuff that I see.
Gotcha. Whew. Wow. Well, I always ask this question. I think it's an important one. So, do you have a big vision somewhere 5 or 10 years out of what you hope to be doing?
I do have a big vision. It's funny because when I started a podcast, I really had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I wasn't really overly concerned about it, but I will say, as a child, I grew up listening to the radio, and there were various radio personalities that I listened to, and I always loved listening to the radio. And so when I started the podcast, I found a guy who'd been in radio for 30 years. And I said, help me understand. I don't understand podcasting in general, but just help me understand how I can ask better questions and tell more stories. And I say that to say this somewhere along the lines of, I don't know, somewhere around podcast 40, 50, somewhere in there, I was getting feedback from people and I realized that God had given me a little package I didn't know was available, that I was actually pretty decent at what I was doing, and I loved it. I loved it. And then I started thinking about, well, what does all this mean? What's the big vision for this and where would I like to see it go? And so, to answer your question, I would like to create some kind of multimedia education company for men where we're really doing workshops, have training available for them. We're doing retreats, and we're able to bring these men into a training environment, whether it's online or in person, and help them with their life. And so I'd like to see the podcast expand. I'd like to see more books. I'd like to see more workshops. I'd like to see more training, and I'd like to see more retreats. And that's where on my vision board, that's where I want to see this thing go. And I'm always thinking about what does it take to get there, and who can I align with? Because as you know, as we've talked about, there are a lot of men out there trying to do this. And that's awesome. But I'll say this, having done a lot in the nonprofit community, there are great nonprofits out there, but there are so many nonprofits doing the same thing. They kind of just, stomp all over the top of each other. And I think that, where I can align with other coaches, other teachers, other educators, other people in this men's area. We're not competing. I never view it as that. I think that we can build this vision out stronger so that we can get to my ultimate goal, which is to touch the hearts of a million men. And so that's going to take a lot of help to do that. But I believe that that is a very legitimate vision.
It is a totally legitimate vision, and you already know I'm a super connector. I've got people showing up. You're saying media company, and here we've got Snowman Media Group wanting to fill stadiums, and I mean, yeah, I definitely will connect you with some folks. In fact, I'm going to tag some people on this video and encourage them to watch the interview because That's it. We're all being given these incredibly huge visions. I don't believe God expects us to get it done by ourselves.
Not only does he not expect it, I don't even want it.
That's right.
I wanna share it because, ultimately, yeah. Do I wanna be standing in front of a stadium of, 40, 50, 100,000 people? Sure, but I don't wanna do it alone. I want people that have the same vision standing alongside me so that we can go out and make a change in this world. And we need it. We need to strengthen it's not just the men.
No.
If we do this for the men, we're going to build stronger families and stronger communities and have a stronger country. And we need this
Yes.
now, right now.
Now. That's right. Now.
We need this right now. And so, I have felt a sense of urgency on this for quite some time. And I know a lot of other people sharing that. And so, you know, it it's important to me to connect with other people on this. I've got some other business ventures that I'm doing right now, and I believe that they're going to help us also achieve the mission that I want to achieve.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think one of the most important things we do, Cheyenne, is that we connect and build those relationships. You never know what's going to happen as a result of that.
It's a fact. It's a fact. But if you'll follow through and just like you've been developing that relationship with God, you're getting these inspirations. If we all could learn how to do that, we'd be able to move so much faster, so much more productive, and getting solutions created that we all need. So
100.
I'm with you. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your books? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I always laugh right now because we've been through quite an adventure with the books, but I believe that there's even purpose behind that. So the simplest way to find me and get a hold of me is to go out to my website at truemanlifecoaching.com. You can find my books on there. You can connect and go out and purchase True Man, True Ways. Hey, Father's Day is coming up. I think it would make an excellent Father's Day gift. I am biased, but I do think it would make an excellent Father's Day gift. My podcast is on my website as well, and we give you plenty of options to get out to your favorite podcast channel. So
Cool.
the definitely, and my calendar's linked on my website. So I've tried to even speaking. I've got my speaking stuff on there, and there's going to be more to come on that. But if you want to find out more about me, connecting on True Man Life Coaching is definitely the way to go.
Super duper. And as we wrap up this fun time together, do you have any final words of wisdom for the guys or the people who are supporting their guys out there?
Yeah, don't give up. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel just because life's kicked you down a little bit. It's not worth it. There are
Mm-mm.
people out there, whether it's myself or many other men and organizations that I'm connected with. We want to see you be the best man that you can be, but only you can make that decision. And I hope you choose wisely.
Mm. Good words to hear. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a blessing to have you here with us. And thank you to all our change makers who tune in here and get to know some of the amazing people in this group. Collaboration is a big word, and it's one that I'm promoting more and more. So, if you see something in this interview and you feel inspired to reach out to Mike, please do, because, the work that needs to be done. Oh goodness, what is it they say? The work is plentiful and the harvest is few, something of that nature. That's exactly what we're talking about. So thanks again to everybody, and we'll see y'all in the next interview. In the meantime, have a marvelous day. Take care. Bye bye.